This particular anime rewatch took me a little longer to complete than I would have liked, but it allowed me more time to just kind of let it sit while I thought about it, because honestly, there's a lot to unpack here, so let's not waste any time. I can't realistically move on without bringing attention to what you all have been doing around the channel this month, though. The success of my Boruto and We Without Wings videos have been incredible, and I'm speechless. As of time of recording, the channel has reached, actually it has surpassed, its first third of 1,000 subscribers. The goal for the end of the year is still to hit 1,000, so it's certainly more of a possibility now than what it was. I haven't smiled like this in a while, so thank you. Citrus vs. Bloom Into You should be dropping next week of the 23rd, and I'm excited to finally bring that to you. A Shinsekai Yuri video will follow after that to close out April's planned videos as we move into May. Don't be surprised if something else shows up in your inbox that wasn't previously announced. For those new to Girls Love Anime or manga or any GL media in general, these are stories that focus on romantic feelings or relationships between two female characters. For many, Citrus is that stereotypical GL anime, but for others, anime like Bloom Into You represent an entirely different side of that faction. Girls Love or Yuri media are pretty high in demand right now, especially as many countries finally begin to unravel the after effects of the COVID pandemic. People are looking for something that maybe they couldn't necessarily have due to certain restrictions, while others just want something that makes them smile at the sweetness. This is a genre that hasn't quite entered its peak yet, but it's well on its way, and a lot of that is due in part to anime like Bloom Into You or Yagate Kimi ni Naru. Unsurprisingly, this title doesn't translate perfectly, and I'll do my best to explain that real quick so you have a better sense of the overarching theme of this anime. Yagate has only one kanji, yaga, which means before long, soon, shortly. Kimi means you and can be used like anata. Ni is a particle and is directional in nature. It can mean to, at, in, etc., and naru means to become, a root verb. In essence, the title of this anime actually means something closer to becoming you, soon to be you, and I'll explain why these titles specifically a little later, but the opening title sequence of the anime has quite a bit to do with flowers, so it's not hard to see where you'd get the word bloom, which has a similar connotation as to become. Think of it this way. If you're familiar with the YouTuber Islet and her music, she has a song called Hoshi ni Naru, which translates to become a star, I am a star, etc. So, let's talk about the main theme of the anime. Bloom Into You focuses on a more methodical and slower approach to a relationship and finding what your feelings are. The theme of becoming you is huge, and I can't overstate that. The anime follows technically three girls, a love triangle, I know, Yu, Toko, and Sayaka, but the love interest is Toko. Yet, she struggles with being true to herself and secretly hates who she is. It isn't until episode 6 of the anime we find out Toko's sister passed away in a traffic accident when she was young. And this is important for two reasons. 1. Toko is expected to follow in her sister's footsteps and pick up where she left off. While this ends up being something Toko wants to do anyways, it becomes an issue as she struggles to figure out her feelings for Yu while making sure Sayaka has a proper place in her life as well. Japanese families can have high expectations for their children, and despite the unfortunate circumstances that befell Mio, Toko fell victim to her sister's successes. The anime places large emphasis on the stage play and the reasoning for picking it back up after nearly a decade-long hiatus, which leads me into reason number 2. Toko becomes obsessed with making sure the stage play happens against all odds, and it isn't until Yu and Toko talk about it one evening by the river that it becomes apparent Toko's fascination with the play is because of her sister. She wanted to pick up where she left off, not just out of love for her, but because she wasn't sure who she was. Was she trying to be more like Mio, or was she trying to become her own self? If we reference the title of the anime again, Bloom Into You or Yagate Kimi ni Naru, the words you and become Naru are the focal points. What this is referring to isn't Yu and the relationship and love she has for her. Not entirely, at least. It's about Toko's own self and becoming her sister. The Yu, Kimi, in the title. This is why the death of Toko's sister is so important. Everyone expects her to be like her sister and become her in some ways. But this isn't reasonable, which leads me into the next parts of this anime. Identity is another huge chess piece to this anime and directly ties into the title. Episode 10 hints at this directly at the end of the episode when Toko dreams of Mio. When she wakes up, she pulls a framed photo of her sister from a drawer and says that she will become her. Toko has yet to figure out her own identity, and the anime makes sure you know that when she's given the role of the amnesiac girl in the play who is unsure of who she is, name, family, etc. She can't even remember the passcode on her phone until Yu, who was given the role of her nurse. Sayaka, who I mentioned at the start of the video, arguably has a much closer relationship with Toko at first before Toko begins to explore her feelings for Yu. It's interesting that Sayaka is given the role of the amnesiac girl's lover in the play, and not Yu, but it's important to note that this play is being written based off of the three of them, Yu, Toko, and Sayaka. Koyomi, Yu's friend, is the one writing the script, and it's through her eyes, or words on the page in a sense, that we're seeing this love triangle form, but from the eyes of someone on the outside. Who's really deserving of Toko's heart, though? The anime struggles to explain this, especially with its ending, but I'll get to that. We see that Toko decides to become her sister, but she wavers on this and finds comfort in Yu's quirks. Even during kiss scenes, her feelings are full of passion and desire. However, this leads me to my next point. Traditional and non-traditional love. Yu states often that she isn't sure how she feels about Toko in a relationship between two girls, the latter being early on, and this is compounded by her own family, who we actually don't see much of. When we do, there are a couple of key scenes. In one, she brings Toko home and there's playful discussion on whether Toko is Yu's girlfriend, which is followed up by a please by her sister to Hiro, the guy she's with. Yu is the only character we see who has family that struggles with the concept of non-traditional love. Toko wants to be like her sister, but also her own person, and even admits to Sayaka that it isn't that she dislikes girls. When talking about the love letters she gets from them, they're just harder to turn down. Even Sayaka herself, in episode 7, states that, at first, she thought girls dating other girls was weird, though we clearly see she comes around to the idea of it, as is evident during the flashbacks and her approach to Toko when vying for her attention. The love triangle deepens when she tells Yu that she doesn't need to worry about Toko in episode 6 because she has me, Sayaka. However, she fears that Toko isn't into girls, though this seems to get addressed in the following episode. Toko never admits that she has feelings for Sayaka despite knowing her longer and Sayaka clearly being into girls, unlike Yu, who struggles with her own feelings. Yu's never felt what it's like to love someone like that, which makes Toko's approach a bit sudden and kind of forced during the kiss in episode 2. The anime plays with this notion of forbidden love more as things progress with several more kisses and Yu's affirmation that she just isn't sure how she feels. It's reasonable to think that Yu is also afraid to love because she doesn't know what it's like. This is simply because Japanese culture and society were more conservative in their values up until the end of the World Wars. But one could go as far as to say up until the implementation of Harajuku fashion and culture, a blend of Japanese styles with Western influences. There's even a clear bisexual relationship between two of the older women, likely in their 20s or 30s, as well, which seems to hint at a blended approach to this forbidden love as well. It's not often you get bisexual relationships like this either. Especially not today, where much of the Western media is full of forced traits and characters that just aren't as genuine as they were when anime and shows like this were more of a rare gem and not something that is pushed for as heavily as it is. While the diversification in characters and gender roles are reflections on changing norms and customs in our society today, anime like Bloom and You really do a great job at portraying a genuine air. They aren't touted as being something that is absolutely necessary, nor do they have cult fandoms. That's about as much of an opinion as you'll get out of me on the matter, but it's appreciated that this anime approaches these topics in such a way that feels natural, and not like someone tried to rehash the same storyline over for the 100th time. Male characters similarly have their role to play and are present when necessary, even though the anime focuses on Yu, Toko, and Sayaka, which adds a nice touch. Especially Maki early on, though the anime seems to kind of just write them out towards the end. While Blue Into You is regarded as one of the best Yuri anime out there, for obvious reasons, it does still have its faults, as does everything, but these are mostly minor details and don't negatively impact the story too much. There are some small plot holes, such as when Maki expresses his view of love and relationships near the end of episode 4. This doesn't ever get brought back up, and it seems to be something left for the viewer to pick back up in Yu and Toko's relationship. The stage show was meant to be the driving force of the anime, but we never actually get to it, which is somewhat disappointing as it would be the ultimate blossoming of Yu and Toko's feelings for each other. But this would also leave Sayaka out to dry. The anime didn't adapt all of its source material, however, so how the story does end I'll have to read ahead and find out. But I think the way the anime did end was appropriate for what it managed to cover. The opening of the train car doors at the stop symbolizes stepping off the same track everyone else follows and forging your own new and unique path.
You and me. It's time we got going.
The final line of dialogue symbolizes that bond between Yu and Toko. Just as the stage play remains unfinished and in revision, so too does Yu and Toko's relationship. As the script evolves and changes, so too do the two girls. It's a fitting end for what is otherwise a much slower and more methodical approach to a girls' love anime, and I like that. It's not in your face, and it doesn't try to set or force unrealistic standards or boundaries. In fact, I'd imagine Blame It To You did a lot for future works of the genre and shattered the stereotypes that a lesbian relationship is something oddly enjoyed by an occult group of men and isn't actually genuine. Both statements of which are false. Blue Into You was a fair and realistic take on a Yuri anime and an overall solid adaptation despite the older-ish character design and a more watercolor, sketch-like style, and I kinda like that. Whereas Citrus is faster paced with a more sophisticated style, Blue Into You is its polar opposite, and that's perfectly okay. With that, this script breaks 8 pages, and it's also 3 AM as I finish it, which means another 8 hours of editing, so I'm gonna call it here. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you haven't seen my 2 Citrus videos from last spring, and maybe go check those out before next week's Citrus vs. Bloom Into You video, which might have to be a 2-part thing, we'll see. Until then, I'll be busy wasting away with finals, so I may need a little wiggle room on upload dates and times, but community posts are the latest and greatest source of information on the channel and myself, so don't be shy. Thanks for all the love on the channel recently, seriously, and I'll catch you all later. Citrus is also about taking a stand for your feelings, regardless of who it is you love. While the first episodes of the anime play it off as an experimental period, the story is good and the animation really helps to flesh that out, but there is no definitive end to the anime, which creates a problem if Citrus is to hold on to its throne.